I was so afraid and motivated by Touzel's warning to stay hydrated or else that I legit went and got this glass of water immediately afterwards. Go see his video. Actually, watch my video, then go see his video. Unless you're under 18 and your parents don't like cursing, because it's a little... Am I gonna get in trouble? Welcome friends to week 2, but only day 4 of portrait painting. I did a painting for Friday, which if you follow me on Instagram, you saw, or if you follow me on Twitter, I'll link, those things are linked below, hopefully. I was really happy to share it with you for the first time, the first video I did all week. So of course, in the middle of it, my camera froze. And I didn't find out until I went to editing that I lost basically the middle, most important chunk of the video. So I didn't have one for you on Friday. I'm sorry that I left you hanging. I did mention it on my Instagram and Twitter, so if you follow me there, if you want to know next time I let you down, that would be the place to know beforehand. My concussion from last week is a lot better today. I can handle a light being on and towards my face, which is great, because it's really important to have good lighting when you're painting and when you're filming.
So it's time to start painting. I go in first with a kneaded eraser to lighten up some of these lines, because I prefer the lines not to show through in the final piece, which is just a preference. If you do, that's fine too. And I'm going in with a big flat brush to chisel in some of the places where I know for sure I'm going to have deeper shadows. This first layer is carving out the basic shapes with a light wash. Usually I'm choosing a warm tone. Here I definitely am. Usually some base of raw umber with some raw sienna and something pink like magenta dropped into it. Now I'm going over to those hands that were drawn in on the side, if you remember from the example photo, how she has her hands on the side of her face. And I didn't want to leave them exactly where they were in the photo. I lowered what was her left hand, but on our right a little bit. And I'm going to raise up the other hand a little so that it feels more like one hand is in the top half of the painting and the other is in sort of the bottom half, which is not a particular formula. It's just the best estimation I have for what felt right this time around with the composition. Next, I'm going back into the hair using a much warmer brown this time around to fill in and suggest more of where hair was going as opposed to where the skin is at. I'm using these big sweeping motions to get the overall gesture of the hair and locations of the locks of her hair. And then I'm also blending a slightly less vibrant shade of that brown and going back in and using some of it to refine areas of shadow on the skin. Pulling in a bit of pink as well to the cheek areas and using some of this to start to carve in the shadows under the eyebrows and the eyebrows themselves. And at this point in the painting, I usually don't like it at all. This is something that even after many, many portrait paintings, I always get to this point in the middle where I kind of want to give up and scrap it. Usually I don't. Sometimes I do. But even then, I've tried to make a habit of finishing it even if I genuinely think it's not going anywhere. Usually at this point, what I want to do is let this layer dry and just come back to it and see what sense I can make of it when I come back. Another way of stepping back is working at a different part of the painting, which is what I'm doing first here. I'm filling some deeper places in the hair with a deeper, less saturated brown and that big mop brush that gives really fun floaty strokes, for lack of a better term. And it's letting me also define a little bit more where the hair versus hands are. Now I have a smaller brush. This is probably after I took my first break and stepped away from it and let everything dry. And I'm thinking that I want to go in with a finer brush and redefine some of these lines so I feel like I know where I'm going again. So I start with a bit of the hands, the eyebrows, and start to work in the eye lines. I need a better word for that. I know, eyelash line. And then the fold that she has above the eye, and then just a bit of the shadow under the nose. And then it starts to feel like, oh, I do have a face here. Maybe I can make something out of this. I go and start filling in the lips. I usually add in just a touch more pink to whatever tone I'm using when I do the lips. And now I'm redrawing in the jawline. Though I believe I made it a bit too high. And we'll have to go back and fix that later in this painting. Now that that layer is dry, I'm feeling better, and I'm going back in and adding just a second layer of pretty much the same. Another warm, neutral kind of tone to go back in and shade some places before I go back over to where the hands are, and I'm using it flat to chunk in some larger spaces. The flats are nice because they have both the obvious big flat side, but you can also use them sideways and use the tip of them to draw in some line. With that done, I go back in with my smaller brush again and start to pull up some of these lines to refine what the hands are doing a bit more, dropping in a bit more shadow in some places with a more saturated tone. And speaking of saturated tones, I'm going back in with something very saturated to add to her hair. A very red-brown blend. You can see I mean business now. I definitely want to get this hair very defined from the rest of the portrait at this point. So I'm using this very deep tone that I know I won't be using on the rest of her face to describe some of her hair. Well, of course I use a little. Yeah, I'm going to use a little on her eyebrows. And I'm going to pull just a little bit of that, but not quite as vibrant. A little desaturated to refine a few of the lines around the eyes and under the nose and around the lips. And again, that slightly desaturated version to highlight her cheeks a bit before going in with something more orangey and filling out a bit of the spots of the face that I feel haven't been carved out yet. I'm also going to start adding in a bit to her eyes. While she does have darker, it looks bluish kind of eyes, I still want to have a warm base to be working from. So I go ahead and add a bit of that, peachy, desaturated, reddish tone. I need a better word for that. Hey, if you have a good word for that, I would love to know what you would call it. That'd be really cool to know. Anyways, I'm going back in with now some blue. This blue that I have is this turquoise blue that tends to be very staining and sink into the paper a lot. I'm using it to define the eye shape a bit more, nostrils a bit more. At this point, I'm going in with just a small brush, and rather than drawing the shirt in detail, I'm just going in, putting down some simple lines that are suggestive of the way the shirt's sitting. I want to suggest that the shirt is there without making it distracting from the rest of the portrait. Usually, clothes are not the point of a portrait. Usually, the person is. But sometimes you do want to emphasize the clothes, and sometimes the clothes are very essential to the subject of the painting. I can think of, if you were in a wedding, you'd probably care about the accuracy in at least some of the clothing. I'm not satisfied with how the blue is sinking into the paper, so I'm trying out this purple that I don't normally use. I'm just sort of scribbling in some lines that are suggestive, mostly for the hair, because I want the hair to stand out more. Yeah, just filling out a touch of it for the background, using a bit of that purple to refine some of the shadows. Again, on the hands. And to refine more of the face. Now that that's done, I'm going back in with my trusty white gouache to fill in some highlights that were missing. Of course, the chin has a very strong line that got lost. And I'm going into the eyes, adding just a couple of the highlights there, and down on the waterline just a little bit. And after that, I think we're done. The only thing left to do is show you the fantastic part, the best part, removing the tape. Yeah, look at that sweet, fresh, crisp line. Oh man, it was all worth it because at the end we get to remove the tape. Well, there we go. Thank you for joining me and watching this video. I hope you had fun with it. I tried to make it more informative for you this time. That's some feedback that I got and really appreciate from some very nice people. If you enjoyed this video, if you stayed this long, I hope you will give me a like. And even more, I hope you will subscribe and join me for next time. If you want YouTube to tell you when I post my next video, click the bell. And I hope to see you next time, friends. Thank you again, and hope you have a great day.